Hello, welcome to the Overland Legend. I'm Alan. I can't believe it's taken me this long to work out which bolts are which. I've been fumbling around for so long, but it's actually really easy. So in this episode, what I'll show you is how to identify the different types of bolts, and then also how to plan and manage all your bolts and nuts during a restoration. When I look back at all the work that I've done on Landies and not knowing what I need to know about bolts really has wasted a lot of time. Sifting through bolts, trying to find a bolt, trying to find a nut that fits to a bolt, not knowing which spanners fit on which bolts, and then worst of all, fitting the wrong bolts for the wrong application. And actually it's really simple. It's really easy to tell the difference between these bolts. I mean, I'm not an engineer, and there's lots of technical details about thread angles and pitches and TPIs and all sorts of things, but you don't really need to know that. It's useful, but there's some basic things that you can know about how to find out which bolt is which. The most common bolts that I've encountered are metric bolts, because those are the most common these days. And then also from the work that I've done on previous Land Rovers, older Land Rovers, I've come across the imperial bolts, and I thought that was it. And then when I started working on the Series 1, I came across Whitworth bolts, which are British standard bolts. And so when I came across that, I realized I actually need to pay attention now.
The first bolts used were Whitworth, invented in 1842 by Joseph Whitworth. They were called British Standard Whitworth, or BSW, and had a fairly coarse thread. In 1908, a fine thread version was introduced and called British Standard Fine, or BSF. In 1948, after World War II, the world nations cooperated to introduce a unified standard called Unified Thread Standard, with UNF and UNC nomenclature. At the time, the metric standard was introduced and used mainly in Europe and Asia. Nowadays, 60% of bolts are metric, used by most of the world except for the USA and Canada, who still use the unified bolts, accounting for 30% of bolts. All other bolts make up the balance of 10%. Okay, understanding different bolt types. All bolts have three main things to look at. Firstly, the identification on the head of the bolt, then the thread type that it's got, and then the strength of the bolt. So those three things are common to all bolts. Then we've got basically three different types of bolts: the British Standard Whitworth, the Imperial or Unified SAE, and then the metric bolts. So if we look at the British Standard bolts, the identification for them on the head is the name of the company on the top that makes it, and then the letter which indicates the bolt strength. Then there are two types, a fine and a coarse thread. The fine is BSF, British Standard Fine, and the coarse is BSW, British Standard Whitworth. Then the bolt strengths are S and T, indicate the high tensile, which is used for automotive applications, and then for critical components, T is the stronger bolts. On the imperial side, the identification on the top of the head is some lines that indicates also the strength of the bolt. So there's a different number of lines. It can be anything from no lines up to 7 lines. Then there's two thread types, UNF, which is the fine thread, and UNC, which is the coarse thread. And then the bolt strengths, there's quite a range of them. The three most common ones are the 5.1, which is the high tensile, and then anything larger than 8 is critical. And that number, you can see the 5 is equivalent, is the bolt which has got the 3 lines. So it's the number of lines plus 2 indicates the bolt strength. And then on the metric, the number on the top of the head indicates that it's a metric, so a decimal number. That shows that that's a metric bolt. And then it's also, you just have a fine and a coarse thread, and then the bolt strengths are those numbers at the bottom of the bolt, and these also have a range all the way up to I think 12 or somewhere around there, but these are the common ones. So if there's no number on it, then there's no strength indicated. 4.8 is sort of for normal applications. 8.8 would be the minimum for use in automotive applications, and then 10.9 and larger is for stronger applications with high pressure, like in engines, for critical applications.
Okay, so let's look at the different types of bolts now that you get. There's basically those three types. So you've got the British Standard, you've got the SAE or Unified, and then over here you've got the metric. So now the difference is when you look at the head of the bolt, you see and see what the writing is when you look on the head of the bolt. So on this one you can see that it's got a name of a company over here, and then it's got a letter at the bottom, same as this one. This one's got Auto, that's quite a common name, and the letter on the bottom. And then here's another type, this one's Newton, that's also quite a common British Standard bolt. Then when you look at the SAE or the Unified, they've got a series of stripes on. You can see this one's got three markings on. This one also is the same. So that is how you can tell that this is an SAE or a Unified bolt. So these ones would be UNF bolts. And then the last one is the metric. Metric always has an actual number on. So whenever it's got a number like that on, especially with a decimal point, then those are metric. In each of those types, you've got a coarse thread and a fine thread. So if you look at these two, then you'll be able to see that this one, you can see that the one is a coarse thread and then the other one is a fine thread. So in each of these, you've then got a coarse thread and a fine thread. So on the British Standard, the fine thread is BSF for standing British Standard Fine, and then BSW, which is British Standard Whitworth, which is the coarser thread. On the SAE bolts, you're going to have the fine thread being UNF, so a Unified Fine, and then UNC, which will be Unified Coarse. And then on the metric, you've just got fine and coarse. So both of these are coarse. Then the other thing is each of these different bolt types has a different spanner size or different spanner type. So you can see that these all look fairly similar. If you look at them, the size of them looks fairly similar. So you would assume they could all take the same spanner, but they don't. So this British Standard or the Whitworth is going to use a Whitworth spanner, and that one is, on this particular one, the size is a 1/4 inch Whitworth. You can see the WW for the Whitworth over here, and that fits onto here quite comfortably. So that's a perfect fit on that one. Then on the Unified or the UNF, it's going to be a normal, more common imperial size, and there that one fits really perfectly there. So sorry, the 1/2 inch, and the 1/2 inch fits on here. And then the last one, which is a normal metric, so that you would be able to see that that's probably a size 13, and that's exactly what it is. So size 13, and that fits onto there. So those are the three different types of. There's really just, as I said, three different types of bolts, and you've got basically then three different types of spanner sets that you would use for those bolts.
I'm trying to sort out the bolts here. Normally what I've done when I dismantle a vehicle, then I try and keep everything together and then just put it in a packet and label where it came from. But what happened this time is I did that, and I just used a numbering system, and then I put a number and wrote down what it was. But unfortunately I lost that numbering system, so I landed up with a whole lot of packets with numbers on, and I didn't know what they were. But I also then, that was sort of halfway through, then the rest of the time I actually wrote on the packet what it was. But
now, you know, when I come to reassemble again, it's difficult to know what the right bolts are, and some of them are missing. You know, some of them will be like missing nuts, and or they don't have the right number of washers, or I had to cut it off. So it's, you know, you lose track of it. So what I'm trying to do now is actually come up with a better system, and actually what I've done is I've gone back to the parts manual and had a look at that and made a list of everything that I still need. So that's what I've got here is a list of all the different bolts that I need, and the sizes and everything. So I think what I'm going to try and do now, but I'm sort of still sitting in between my old system and my new system, but what I need to do is really just take all of these bolts and actually just separate them into the sizes, the right sizes, and put them all together, and then just work from there and then draw them out as I need them. So I think that's what I'm going to do, but yeah, it's a bit of a challenge because I'm scared to get rid of these ones that I've got in these packets that I know what they are. But yeah, so anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. And that's what it looks like when it comes back from the plating. So that's just normal zinc plating with a silver finish. That looks quite good. And then these old nuts and bolts also redone. Nice and clean and fresh. Okay, so what I've done is finally got all of this sorted out, got a better plan going, and I took the manual and I took all my bolts that I had replated and redone, and I put them all together and sorted them all out. And so what I've done then is put them all together in the right place. So this is rear body, and I labeled them all in all these different packets. This is number 27 hinge locker lid. So those are the ones for that. So that's what I've done now, and I've got all of these all sorted out. So when I come to assemble now, I just need to check what the number is, and then I can check in the manual on that particular thing. So if it's tailboard, then I can check on the tailboard part of the manual, and then I just find the number that I need, and then I know how many washers and everything. So that's what I've done that all. I also had these things recoated, because with the first time I did it, I didn't get them properly done, and there were still some pieces that had that were rusted and whatever, so I had them redone. And then also, this is actually a new bolt that I bought, so I bought new ones that were unplated, then I cleaned them, and then I had them plated as well. So these are the replacements. This is a UNF that I've had replated to do that, but these ones would be some of the older ones that I've got. So that's how I've sorted that out now. So having gone through this whole process and learning along the way, I've refined the way that I will work with bolts and nuts in future, and I'm sure it will help you if you're going to start this process. So what I will do in future, and the best way to do it as far as I'm concerned, is just remove all the bolts, nuts and washers. Don't worry about keeping them together. Remove them all, then clean them and have a look at them, check which ones you can keep, which ones are missing, take stock of what you've got, and then get the extra ones that you need, or the replacements that you need. Then you get all of those off to the electroplater, get them electroplated, and then when you get them back, then you can sort them out. Then you just use the manual, the parts manual that shows you exactly which bolts go where, and you can package them for the assembly process. So when you come to put the different parts on, you'll have all the bolts in the right place. So that's the way that I would do it in future. So let me know in the comments below how you've done it and how you do it, and if you've got any better tips and tricks that we should be using and that people can use. So I hope you found this interesting and useful. I've enjoyed putting it together, and thank you very much for watching again. I'll see you next time.